Welcome to the SBI podcast, offering CEOs, sales and marketing leaders ideas to make the number.
Welcome SBI podcast listeners and video podcast viewers. My name is Greg Alexander, and I am the CEO of SBI, a sales and marketing company dedicated to helping you make your number. This is the weekly SBI podcast, and its purpose is to help you make your number by getting your peers to share with you how they make theirs. Today's guest is Perry Offer. Perry is the CEO of the Dialogue Group, a leader in the A2P messaging space, which in layman's terms says these are the folks who make sure your text messages get to the people you sent them to. Founded in 1994, the company is headquartered in the UK, has offices all over the world, and is trusted by the leading mobile operators. Perry has been with the company for almost 3 years, but he has 35 years of business experience and is known for his ability to get companies to grow. So Perry, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Greg. Great to be here.
Okay, today we're going to ask Perry to help his peers, other CEOs, set their companies up for success by demonstrating how to set objectives correctly. Let me explain that a little bit. So CEOs define the objectives that must be met. If the CEO does not set objectives correctly, then the functions inside a company will have a hard time being successful. For example, the CEO sets a revenue growth objective for the entire company, which then allows the sales leader to convert that to things like sales quotas. Many a sales leader has missed his number and unfortunately has lost his job because the CEO failed to set objectives accurately. We're going to use a section of SBI's revenue growth methodology to guide our conversation, specifically Phase 5, pages 62 and 63. If you want to get a copy of this, download our methodology at salesbenchmarkindex.com/2016-report. Okay, Perry, you ready to go?
Yep.
All right, my first question for you is, what are the objectives your company must meet and how were they determined?
Principal objective for our company is the existing shareholders who've been in the business for 19 years are fairly keen to de-risk themselves. Having been in the business the period of time that it is, I was formally charged with leading the company towards an exit. And so that has very much shaped the whole objective forming process inside the company. And so the primary objective that we initially had to set ourselves was identifying which area of the marketplace we would seek to grow in to realise that overarching objective. There were a number of potential opportunities for us, and it was a case of researching those opportunities and identifying, given the mix of human, financial, physical resources we could bring to bear, which of those opportunities would be the best fit for us to attempt to achieve in terms of getting the shareholders to where they wanted to be. And all other objective setting that's taken place in the organisation in terms of implementing the various functional strategies that we've been looking to pursue have been set broadly against that background. And the decision we made was to enter the A2P space because we saw that as being the best fit for exactly all of those criteria that I mentioned, and also it offering organic growth at a rate within itself that was compatible with us achieving a sufficiently large share of that organic growth to achieve the target valuation. So that's pretty much been what's been driving our decision-making and objective-making process over the past couple of years.
Okay, so fantastic. So clear objective. The shareholders want to exit at some point, so your job as a CEO is to grow the company so they exit on favorable terms. And having that as an objective allows all the functional leaders in the company to understand how they create or destroy shareholder wealth, which is great. Let me cascade down from there if I can, and let's talk about the product, right? So now that I know what your corporate objective is, what are the product-specific objectives that must be met in order to support that corporate objective?
I think the product-specific objectives, given the route that we moved down, which involved following what I term a poacher-turned gamekeeper strategy, in that instead of selling to the customers in our marketplace, we would sell to a new product to a new class of customers. The mobile operators themselves really began with research. Any objective set in exercise has to be well grounded, and certainly when it comes to product, you have to spend sufficient time researching the needs of the decision makers, the buyers, the influencers, such that you bring a product to market that actually meets the needs of a marketplace that exists in the first place. That's not forgetting for a moment that you may actually have to create the market from scratch by meeting an entirely new need, but in those kind of situations, even more paramount the importance of research. But if you don't spend sufficient time up front understanding what the needs of the marketplace are, then all else is academic and potentially completely goes to waste. So for us, it was very much about investing in that period of time up front, and obviously we've engaged SBI to support some of that work, such that we knew that we were bringing a product into a marketplace that stood a reasonable chance of closing a few deals and, as you're very fond of reminding us, making the number.
Okay, and when I think about product objectives, I think about things like ship dates on new product releases. I think about things like customer satisfaction levels. I think about things like market share. Do those things matter to you, given what your strategy is, which is to exit? I mean, like if I was to look at your product leader's set of KPIs, the things that you were holding him or her accountable to, what types of metrics are you tracking there in the product group?
Those that you mentioned, paramount amongst those is the market share that we're looking for.
Okay.
We are dealing in following our poacher-turned gamekeeper strategy. We're actually targeting a fairly finite universe of 650 leads, which are the worthwhile mobile operators themselves, and we have a very clear beat rate established that will give us the share of the market that we need in order to achieve the target valuation. So that is the primary KPI that we look at the topmost level. And then, yes, of course, there are some subsidiary and supporting KPIs around the product that enable us to achieve the overall market penetration that we're seeking. But that is the primary top-level KPI that we look at and track our progress against.
Okay, perfect. I mean, it's a very clear corporate objective. We want to increase shareholder value. Very clear product objective. There's 650 mobile operators in the world, and what's our penetration rate? So we're completely aligned here from the corporate strategy to the product strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. And the good thing about, of course, having a fairly well-defined and finite universe is that the ticket value for every sale is pretty clearly identifiable based on the combination of, facts that one can find out in the public domain and the sheer benefit of the experience of having been in business for 20 years. So we're very clear about the share of the marketplace that we need to achieve in order to secure the exit objective. But actually, our ambition scales somewhat beyond the exit objective, because clearly whoever takes it on wants to be clear that there's future growth still to come. And we only need to do 10 sales to turn this into a business that's worth £100 million to someone, $150 million. So it's very easy to mark out the beat rate and cadence that you're looking for and be very, very clear about whether you are on track or not. So that's a good thing. Yeah,
very good. Listening to you, your answer reminds me of Rashid Scaff. And Rashid is the CEO of AMX, who's the leader in conference room technology. I asked Rashid a similar set of questions for an article I wrote for the SBI magazine, and the article was titled, "What CEOs Need to Know About Their Marketing Strategies." And it was published in the Q2 edition. And in it, he talks about cascading corporate objectives to the marketing team. So those listening to our conversation, you're probably going to want to get a copy of this magazine and read this article. So why don't we take a short break here and let everybody know how to get a copy of the magazine. So stick around, we'll be right back.
Making your number is hard. Your problems are complex. Complex problems need complex solutions. Introducing the SBI Magazine. Read in-depth stories written by award-winning journalists about how your peers have overcome their problems to make the numbers. When you need more than a tweet, social post, or blog article, turn to the SBI Magazine. Go to salesbenchmarkindex.com to subscribe.
Welcome back. My name is Greg Alexander, and I'm the CEO of SBI. My guest today is Perry Offer, the CEO of the Dialogue Group. Today we are discussing how a CEO of a company can set his or her company up for success by accurately setting objectives. We're using SBI's revenue growth methodology to do it, specifically phase 5, pages 62 and 63. And before the break, Perry shared with us how he sets his corporate objectives and cascades them down to product goals. During this segment, we're going to hear from Perry how corporate and product objectives become marketing targets, sales quotas, and HR metrics. So Perry, how do you convert company revenue targets and product line targets, which you just shared with us in the previous segment, into targets for the marketing team, which can be hard because marketing sometimes, unfortunately, is not measured as tightly as some of the other areas. So what are the targets for your marketing team?
The principal target we're working to is a fairly hard one and pretty easy to measure, which is marketing bringing in the leads at the expected beat rate, which against the background of certain assumed rates of conversion will enable us to close the volume of deals we're looking for to secure the valuation of the company and the exit objective. So that's the primary metric that we're tracking now because we've ramped up significantly our investments, in marketing over the past 12 to 18 months. Certainly, that's been based full square around the methodologies that you've taught us and brought into the organisation. But it's all about keeping the focus on a very limited number of top-level KPIs upon which everything else hinges. And for us, when it comes to marketing, the primary one we're focusing on is the pipeline coming through in the right shape at the expected rate or the desired rate that will take us towards this objective that we've been charged with by the shareholders.
Yep. Okay, fantastic. So budget's gone up, very clear. Dollars are spent wisely if we generate more leads. So I love the
Correct.
Simplicity and crispness of that. Follow-up question to that. So these high-level objectives have to become sales quotas at some point. So how do you turn what we've talked to up to this point into sales quotas?
It's, as I mentioned earlier in the conversation, given the fairly predictable levels of revenue that can be extracted from an individual operator, which is usually a combination of some kind of multiple around the number of subscribers that operator has, combined with the maturity of the marketplace, then what we typically do is we take the area that an individual salesperson is covering. We know the geographical focus of our marketing efforts and the volume of operators that are likely to come through as leads, as well as the volume that we're likely to be able to drum up ourselves by direct contact. And that usually is fairly predictably turned into a margin quota, not a revenue quota, a margin quota for each individual salesperson based on that combination of subscribers and market maturity in an individual country that you're likely to find in the geographical part of the world for which they're responsible.
So the question I have to ask you on that, which I love, we advocate for margin quotas as opposed to revenue quotas. But sometimes when I make that suggestion, my clients think I'm crazy. You've decided to do that. How come?
Yeah, I mean, primarily because depending on the maturity of the market, the price per message that can be secured without damaging market volumes differs quite significantly. So, for example, in Singapore, the market price per message that the market will bear without damaging volumes is probably 3.5 cents, US cents. But if you go to Sri Lanka, the market price is probably 1.25 cents. So what we're really interested in and what really motivates our people, and certainly motivates me because it's what will drive us towards an exit, is it's the margin because the sale price can vary so widely. And, I think, in any marketplace where, whether you talk about it's the maturity of the marketplace or the differing complexities or of the proposition, the product that people will buy through differing channels, that can mean that the sale price can vary dramatically, and therefore I don't think revenue targets make much sense at all.
Yeah, okay.
It's the old, margin is sanity, revenue is vanity mantra that I'm sure, plenty of people are familiar with. But no, it's what makes sense in our marketplace, and I certainly wouldn't have it any other way.
So I'm going to repeat that so that people can tweet that out. Revenue is vanity, margin is sanity. That is a great soundbite for us. Let's go to HR. So here we are now. We've got corporate goals, product goals, marketing goals, sales goals, and now the HR team's got to put a team on the field. What type of metrics do you hold them accountable to?
Now, that's something that is probably the least advanced in terms of where we are as a company right now. And it's a piece that we were discussing with your guys in Tokyo only last week. I think in order to execute successfully on the objective, we have a lot of work to do in terms of skill building, talent management, and the various building blocks that you expect to see as part of a key sort of like functional HR strategy. What I can say to you, and hopefully this gives your readers sufficient such that they feel this is a worthwhile answer, is this. I think the challenge for any organisation that wants to be strategically aligned and focused to execute on any desirable set of corporate objectives is that its C-level people have to be focused around three things. Those are grasping opportunities, managing risks, and driving productivity. I would say that the basis of any HR metrics program is the extent to which initially your C-level team and then the entire organisation is balancing and setting its priorities against the background of those three overarching requirements. Mm-hmm. If you can strike the right balance of those, and the balance will depend very much on the type of opportunity you're looking to grasp in what kind of marketplace and the dynamics of that individual marketplace, then you will have the basis of an effective HR strategy that will drive the business forward. So I'd like to be more rounded in my answer than that, or more rounded and more specific in my answer to that. But in terms of where we are at the moment, that is our thinking on it, and it is something that was very much at the forefront of what we were talking about last week, because we're driving a lot of change through the organisation, and change, much as it's a good and desirable thing, can have some negative impact on morale. And the consensus is that we're starting to see some of that right now. So we need to complete our HR strategy with a full and detailed set of metrics so that we can manage those kind of dynamics as we continue to move forward.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Well said. I mean, the ultimate metric, people metric, is productivity. And in the sales and marketing game, that's revenue, or in your case, margin per head. Some things I'd offer the audience here is the percentage of your team that's in the A category, B category, C category. If you have some objective assessment technique, the time it takes for a new hire to become productive. That's another one you could possibly measure. Fill rate. So, how many open jobs are there on an org chart? How long does it take to fill them? Right. So there's a series of metrics here that in the HR group that can line up well with what we've talked about so far.
Certainly we track, things like churn, some of the more typical functional measurements that you usually see in an organisation. But we still have some work to do in making sure that, the metrics that we deploy in that part of the business are really tied into the rest of the strategy, are driving the thing forward in a balanced way. My typical experience, regrettably, is that it's always easy to put in a request for more resources, but it's somewhat more difficult to ask yourself that soul-searching question first of could I do more with less so that I avoid having to make that request in the first place. Yep. A common problem that no doubt many listeners will be grappling with.
Yep, I agree. Perry, have you had a chance to see SBI TV just yet?
Yes, I have.
Okay, great. I'm going to draw the audience's attention to a specific episode. So we had Chris Perry, who heads the sales, marketing, and service departments for Broadridge Financial, discuss getting into strategic alignment with the CEO and his peers. And I'm bringing it up right now because it's relevant to this conversation. First off, Chris very rarely misses a number, even going back to his days at Thomson Reuters. And our audience might find it useful. And the reason for that is that what you're hearing right now is the CEO's perspective on objectives. If you watch Chris's show, you'll hear the functional leaders the way he sets objectives and how top down and bottoms up kind of meets in the middle to have a great set of objectives. So let's take a quick break and make sure everybody can understand how to find that episode. So we'll be right back. You are watching SBI TV. This is a monthly web TV show featuring guests just like you, executives trying to grow their revenues. Each month, you can peek behind the scenes and watch your peers discuss their strategies for how they make their numbers. You are not going to want to miss this. Welcome back. My name is Greg Alexander, and I'm the CEO of SBI. My guest today is Perry Offer, the CEO of the Dialogue Group. Today we are discussing how CEOs sets and cascades objectives for the company. We're using SBI's revenue growth methodology to do it, specifically phase 5, pages 62 and 63. And before the break, Perry and I were discussing converting the company revenue goals into marketing targets, sales quotas, and HR metrics. During this segment, Perry is going to share with us his operating cadence, how he communicates with his team weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annually to make sure these objectives are driven into the company. So let's go there. So Perry, do you meet with your team weekly? And if so, what's the content of that meeting?
Yes, I meet on Monday mornings each week. And broadly speaking, we run across the organisation from top to bottom. The primary challenge that I find in most companies at Dialogue's size, which incidentally Dialogue's revenues are about $45 million annual run rate at the moment, are growing quite quickly, is making sure that the whole thing continues to operate not just on a silo basis, but across the piece and cross-functionally, such that we get the kind of alignment that we're looking for that ensures that new initiatives are brought to the marketplace in an orderly manner, and we don't shoot ourselves in the foot. So my weekly meeting is very much about ensuring that, via a combination of lagging information and leading indicators about what we're currently working on with an eye to the future, we continue to maintain that alignment, and we don't do anything that makes ourselves look ridiculous in the marketplace, nor start trampling over different parts of the business as they continue to pursue their own individual functional objectives. That meeting typically lasts about 90 minutes. It's very pointed. There is a section on the end called Any Other Business where anyone gets a chance to raise an issue that may have come in from left field and therefore needs a red flag that we may choose to debate at that point or call another meeting later on in the week. But that's the primary meeting through which I exercise sort of tactical functional control.
Okay, very good. And that's a group meeting, and is that done virtually via conference call, or is that done face-to-face? Yeah,
that's right, yeah. Various people dialed in from around the world using GoTo, for sharing, and there's an information pack that is pulled together from within the company's systems, with a spot of narrative attached to it each week. So that it gives us, the feel that, okay, we're very much in line to hit this month's number, and actually the next couple of months aren't looking too bad either.
Yeah, very good. I would challenge the CEOs that are listening and watching the show. I mean, what you just heard from Perry is that every Monday, 90 minutes with the team, cross-functionally, to making sure that once you get into strategic alignment, which there's a lot of work that goes into that, you don't fall out of strategic alignment. You're driving it on a weekly basis. That's a great best practice for all of us to follow. Perry, some of my clients, especially CEO clients, follow up a weekly meeting with either or both a monthly and a quarterly meeting. And the content of those two, as compared to the weekly meeting, tends to be a little bit differently. Do you have a monthly meeting, and is it just a summary of the weekly meetings? Do you skip the monthly meeting because you're doing this every Monday? Tell me about your monthly cadence, if there is one.
Yeah, the monthly meeting, we call it the internal board meeting because we meet with the shareholders as a formal board once every quarter. What we do at the monthly internal board meeting it's not so much an aggregation of the weekly meetings as we produce our monthly reporting pack that has both historic and forward-looking rolling forecast information. But most importantly, we use the monthly board meeting as our primary mechanism for managing change inside the business. So we hold as part of that meeting something called the Organisational Change Board. And that is where any changes to what the company is and its existing modus operandi by way of new products, entirely new products, or amendments to the existing product set are discussed, validated and approved before they move forward into actual production and then eventually launch into the marketplace. So, it fulfills two functions. Based on what we are today, are we hitting the numbers in the past and do we look like we're going to be hitting them in the future? And also, are the plans that are going to deliver those future numbers coming forward in the right way, laid out cross-functionally, such that everyone in the organisation knows their piece, changes to RACI documents, all that kind of thing, changes to KPIs that will be necessary, new workflow that needs to be built, in order that when it comes to launch, it goes as effectively as it possibly can, and we see a return on those investments as early as we possibly can.
Fantastic. Monthly meeting just to manage change. I think that's fantastic. And for a fast-growing company like yours, I can see why you do it. Let me follow that up with the quarterly and/or annual meeting. Do you bother with the quarterly business review and the annual strategic planning process, or because?
We do. Okay. That's something that we've been using for the first time around this year. And I think in terms of what we're seeking to achieve by way of exit, it's, even if you're not looking for an exit, it's a fundamental bloody prerequisite because, are you building a business just for the next 12 months or are you looking to build a business across a 3 or 4 year time frame? Certainly what we're trying to do in our marketplace is to drive a message into it whereby we educate the entire ecosystem that there is more money to be made across the medium term in orderly markets as opposed to disorderly markets. That requires that we therefore have a 3 or 4, 5 year view on the strategy that we believe we need to take to market in order to deliver on that strategic intent. And, a monthly meeting talking about what is largely short-term stuff, how did we do last month and, what's the next couple of months look like, just doesn't, it doesn't cut the biscuit when it comes to that medium-term view that I think all companies should be driving towards, because there are plenty of idiots out there who can look no further than the end of their nose. And I think that, we have to strive to be better than that.
Yeah.
And so, I'm very much focused around building a business with sustainable margins and a market position that enables us to drive it to, as high a value as we possibly can. And the only approach that I believe is compatible with that is taking the medium-term approach, and that requires that you have quarterly business reviews in which you check that, yes, what we're doing right now and across the coming 2 to 3 quarters is very definitely in alignment and is going to remain that way. But are we discussing and laying down the plans such that once we get beyond this year and beyond this year's month-by-month forecast, that we are already developing the ideas now that are going to deliver the nuggets of gold in 18 months, 24 months, 30 months. And that's certainly the basis upon which we've set out our stall, because our strategic intent is to be the Google of A to P.
Yeah, fantastic. So there you have it. You just heard directly from a CEO on how to set objectives and drive it into the business weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annually. And look, and Perry's great UK wit, look beyond the tip of your nose. I love that. So we're going to take one more break. When we come back, Perry and I will discuss what to do next. What to do next if you are setting objectives right now. If you like listening to Perry and you want access to more peer-driven best practices, here's how to subscribe to the SBI blog.
Each day, you receive hundreds of emails, tons of text messages, countless telephone calls, and sit in too many meetings? How do you find ideas to make the number with all this noise? The SBI blog filters all this nonsense for you and presents only first-rate ideas to make the number. Simplify your life. Subscribe to one blog and read the best content. Go to salesbenchmarkindex.com and subscribe today.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. Perry, let's put a nice bow on this. I would like you to speak directly to the audience and give them maybe 1 to 3 things that you would do immediately following this show to set and cascade objectives through a company if you were, let's say, a newly appointed CEO in a new business.
Okay. That's a very good question, and I'm very glad you asked it, because if you hadn't, I probably would have brought it up anyway. If you were to go to my LinkedIn page, what you will see on my LinkedIn page is something about me that says transformation through simplification. In setting objectives for a company, the most common problem I find or the most common obstacle to getting a business focused, in alignment and setting effective objectives is that the human race constantly overestimates its capacity to execute. So when I go into any business, I ask usually 3 questions. What problem do we exist to solve? How good a job are we doing it by comparison to the competition? And what are the 5 things, and only 5, we initially need to focus on to do a far better job than that?
So give me those 3 one more time.
To the extent of, don't talk to me about number 6.
So hold on, you went a little faster and I was trying to take notes. Give me those 3 big questions one more time.
What problem do we exist to solve? How good a job are we doing at that by comparison to the competition? And what are the 5 things we need to improve, do a better job on, starting right now, in order that we can improve our competitive position?
Awesome. So transformation through simplification.
Simplification.
Yep.
Yeah. And so certainly the case with Dialogue and many of the other businesses I've run in the past is to be very, very rigorous and, if necessary, ruthless about the product areas in the marketplace that you're in that you are choosing to play in. And my experience overwhelmingly in what I've done in the past is that you need to cut out a lot of the noise in order to focus the energies of the available resources you have into the 1, possibly 2 growth areas available in your marketplace that you can win at. And another term I have for this is sort of like a grey sky strategy. Yeah. You can look around your marketplace, and most people aren't blue sky strategists like a Steve Jobs, who sees an entirely new world from the horizon to infinity. And there aren't very many Steve Jobs around. So I think most people spend their time in a kind of sort of like cloudy grey sky type environment, and that's the background against which they have to frame their strategy, because typically the marketplace is, a very confused and maybe thundery or stormy type of place. And that's the background against which they have to figure out what to do. And the approach I take by this transformation through simplification is to look for what I call the patches of blue sky in amongst that cloudy sky. Because if you look deeply enough into those patches of blue, what you'll find is opportunities that within the current market structure aren't being exploited and can be exploited if you focus on the 5 things you need to change in order to move yourself ahead of the competition. So you could call it patch of blue sky strategy if you wanted to, but that's the kind of approach to strategy that I've taken in the past. And usually for most companies that have been in the marketplace for a period of time but are underperforming because they've lacked focus, taking that approach can deliver you some transformational results in fairly short periods of time. And as an illustration of that, Dialogue's profits are now 20 times what they were on a monthly run rate basis 2 years ago.
Wow, that's fantastic. All right, so for the rest of us that aren't Steve Jobs, which I put myself in that category, we're going to get focused on the gray sky strategy, or the patches of blue sky strategy. I love your the way that you simplify these things. Let me give my 2 cents to the audience for what it's worth. Back to the question of what should you do after listening and watching the show. Sales and marketing teams can't make their number if the CEO does not give them an accurate number. I mean, I know so many sales leaders who have lost their jobs because the number the CEO gave them was impossible. It was not based in reality. And a key input into assigning out a number correctly and cascading it from the CEO to the leaders of product, marketing, sales, and HR. I mean, it's the CEO's job to do this. If the CEO does not assign objectives to everyone that reinforce each other, like Perry has done, then the revenue goals are just going to get missed. This is why you care. If you want to make sure you get this right, get a copy of this year's research report called How to Make Your Number in 2016, and you can find it at salesbenchmarkindex.com/2016 report. If you feel you may not get a fair revenue target because you have a CEO who can't look past the tip of his nose, and you want a fair number, you can have one of our experts lead you through a workshop, maybe even with your CEO, to detail how to do this. If you're interested in signing up for that, same URL, salesbenchmarkindex.com/2016 workshop. And there you can request for one of our folks to come see you. Perry, I want to thank you for letting me put you on the spot. Your answers were both informative and entertaining, as always. And on behalf of our audience, we all got a little smarter today. So thank you so much for being on the show.
You're welcome, Greg, and best luck to everyone.
All right. And I would also like to thank you, our audience, for tuning in. This show has become very popular. And with this popularity comes great guests like the one we had today. So thank you so much for watching and for tuning in, and I hope you continue to do so. But until then, I wish you much success as you try to make your number.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on SBI services, case studies, the SBI team and how we work, or to subscribe to our other offerings, please visit us at salesbenchmarkindex.com.